This is part two of this video series where we're going to look at how we produced a Calmer Collision's higher laws. And the first one we looked at the drums, and now I thought we would dive in and look at some of the guitars and synths. So let's dive into Pro Tools.
Picking up from where we left off, this is the bass and guitars and synths that we'll cover in this video. In the last video, we covered all the drums and percussion, so we're just going to take it from there. Now, this right here is one bass part, but it's split up into 4 different textures. It's all playing the same thing. So just to kind of hear it in context. And it's really holding down that low end. So just to kind of show you what the different sounds are. That's very Moogish. And then this one. Okay. And this one has a bit more width to it. So when it's combined, you can hear how the different textures kind of play off of each other and just make the sound more full and interesting than just having one of them. Why were those sounds chosen? I don't really know. I mean, we just sort of thought that they kind of played off of each other really well. I mean, to kind of break it down a bit, that one has a bit more bite. That one obviously has a little bit more sub and no high-end texture. That one, I like the kind of like bow, like twanginess of it. And then this one has the width and a bit of aggression in there. So that combines together nicely. Going on to the guitars, let's see what we've got here. So, do you see right through? Do you see it? Oh. So most of these things are doubled. So this is just in the first verse. Well, sorry, both verses. And essentially what you're looking at here is a stack of amps together. So this is a Soldano and this is a Matchless. But I think these are my amps, but they're all taken from my Kemper, for anybody who is a guitar nerd here. So those kind of combine together to give a bit more texture, because if you each of those guitars on their own have a slightly different sound. So when they combine together, it's just a little bit more like harmonically rich. So those are the verse guitars. Going into the second half of the verse, there is this lead line. And that actually is doubled with a synth. If I sort of scroll down to the synth, this one right here. So if you hear it in context. And the purpose of that really is to fill in the spaces in between the vocal lines. So I steady my hand, da 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 da. Show I can, da 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 da. Right? To show I can. Which is a huge part of production, is trying to find the right places to put instruments so that you're generating interest from moment to moment. That's basically the entire job. Under there, though, there's also this kind of main guitar. And that was actually the guitar part that the whole song was written around. I wrote it on an acoustic guitar, and that just happens to be the strumming pattern that I was using. And then so you start with this and a vocal, and then from there, you're essentially building this track around it, and then it ends up getting relegated to just this like really small part that goes through only part of the verse and the chorus. So these all played at the same time. And these guitars really they're not the focus by any means at that part. They just kind of create a little bit of drive, a little bit of grit. And because they're physically played, it adds sort of like, it humanizes it a little bit, which I kind of like. I mean, when I think about a Calmer Collision in terms of its aesthetic, like its production, I like to balance electronic with organic, things that are elements of rigidity against things that are a bit more fluid. So when you hear this in context, especially against the very rigid drums,
So I steady my hands to show I care.
it's not perfect. It's not completely edited to a grid or anything like that, which, again, is sort of just my aesthetic. So next up comes guitars that come in the chorus. And the first one is this. Again, these are all doubled. So if you hear that in context,
'Cause high and lows will heal us from ourselves.
and those are playing kind of along with the synths as well. Not exactly doubling them, but it's close. And I tend to like that, where you add in a bit of something interesting in the choruses, particularly something that's not in the mid-range, just to kind of create something that's uplifting, something that makes you feel like, you've certainly hit the chorus. Next up in the chorus is this driving guitar. Two driving guitars. And I like when you do that, where you sort of vary the chords next to each other so that you get interesting harmonic changes, over the course of something. So if you hear that in context.
High and lows will heal us from ourselves.
Moving on, that part got muted for there because it was probably too much. It's already a bit much, to be honest. But in the second verse, there are these guitar hits that come in and then reverse.
Do you know the chords?
So they're really kind of jangly, sparkly. And then the reverse is actually a Mando guitar. So combined together.
Do you know the chords? 'Cause the effect.
That was always kind of an idea that I liked. I liked that sort of explosion of jangly sparkle. Then we get down to the solos. There's this drone thing that happens that takes over so in the first chorus we had this. But in the other choruses, there's this. Same sort of part in the kind of like drivingness, but this one's just higher up, so it gives you a bit of a lift going to second chorus. Again, really subtle, but it's in there just to give you a bit of kind of expressiveness, a little bit of a lift on the end. Then there's this solo. it's just a guitar going staccato over the chords in the background. Not much to it, just some delay and stuff like that, which I think I baked in. I think I actually recorded with the delay. And then there's this kind of EBO thing, just to kind of create a bit of a build there. And there's an automation on a distortion, which I think is this auto biscuit. And you can hear it get sort of crunchier as it goes on. So that's it for the guitars. Let's check out the synths. So the synths, there's the main synths, which are these ones right here. Which again is a stack of textures. Very 80s. That one gave it a bit more definition. And then so that kind of creates the main texture for the entire song. Do you see it? Oh. This one is the one that we heard earlier that doubles the guitar. And then come the second verse, there's a mellotron. Really subtle, but mellotron just gives this melancholic feel to pretty much everything you put it on. So it's got that texture, and it also changes the harmonics of it because of the fact that it's not following the chords of everything else. It's just doing that back and forth. So next is this stack of synths that are doing the chorus. Now the idea behind this first is to get a stack so that it's really big and wide and does a lot texturally. And so just to give you an idea of what's happening here, we've got these first two giving some width, and then that adds in this, that high bell, really to try and like cover the frequency spectrum. Little sizzle. And then this one I know is from, well, there's a couple here that are from my OB6, which is a Dave Smith's analog synth. Now, it does that a very simple line, except for the do-do-do-do-do at the end, because that's to work around the vocal. Yeah, so that do-do-do-do-do fills in the gap after the vocal finishes. Over that same part, at the end chorus, there's this flute pad, which is just subtle to have, again, added texture sort of pushed in there. Really subtle, it's barely in there. There are these fills, these synth fills, which go into the choruses. Just to kind of create a bit of a transition there. Give it a bit of like grit going in. And it happens going into the second chorus and into the third chorus here. This is in the bridge. And that's, again, just to kind of like give it a texture that underlies that solo. So we're leading up to that. Let's hear it. And it creates kind of an interesting rhythm against the straight staccato of the guitar. So finally, there's this fill synth as well, which I chopped up and printed just because I wanted that exact distortion sound. Let's hear it in context.
Don't give.
Because, you know, there's a space there. It's just nice to kind of create a bit of a build to get you into the bridge a bit. So that's it for this video. We'll pick up in the next one to finish off the song with the vocals.